We thank God for all things because everything that God does is good. St. Paul says again, Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. And we know that all things means all things. All things. We know that all things work together for good to those who love God. God does not do except good. Nothing comes out of God unless it is good. He is the good God, and everything that comes out of Him is good, even when it's painful for you and me. It is good. Who says that Hawaii is always good to be in? No, you need to be in those dark alleys of the city. You need to be in the place where you see homeless sitting on the side of the road. You need to be in hospitals. You need to be in those shelters where little kids are left with no mom and dad. I need to see that. Life is not about tourism. Life is about being in touch with reality. When you travel to a country as a tourist, they will always show you the good sights in that country or in that city. And then you fall in love with the city and you say, I wish I was a citizen of this country. I wish I could live in this city. But my dear, what they showed you is not the whole truth. Because they're not going to show you the dark side of the city. They will only show you the brighter side of the city. That is not reality. I need to thank God in all things, in darkness, in light, in sickness and in health, in poorness and in richness. My relationship with the Lord is a matrimonial bond. I am His bride as a church, and He is the heavenly groom to this bride. And when it comes to marriage, you are in it together in all things, good and bad. Good and bad. St. Paul says, and we know that all things work together again for good to those who love God. Romans 8:28. Let's look at this story of our father Joseph. When we read in Genesis chapter 50 verse 20, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good to save many people alive. Our father Joseph. Who was Joseph? The son of Jacob. Who was Jacob? The son of Isaac. Who was Isaac? The son of Abraham, the patriarch, the one who came from Babylon, Mesopotamia, Iraq. And that's where I come from as well. That's where it all started. The languages began there. The Tower of Babel, which is the United Nations, New York, Manhattan. That's the Tower of Babel, baby. Our father Joseph, his brothers were jealous of him because daddy loved him the most. Because he was the son of Rachel. And Jacob loved Rachel more than any of his other wives. He married 4. Rachel was his favorite always. So Joseph and Benjamin came from Rachel. But he loved Joseph. Out of jealousy, his brothers tried to kill him. And then one of them interfered. He said, hey, look, I agreed to get rid of him, but I didn't agree to kill him. He is our brother at the end. Let us throw him in this well and leave him there to death. They threw him into the well, and as they threw him, there were some merchants approaching them going to Egypt. And those merchants happened to be Ishmaelites. And they stopped and they said, you know what, the best thing is to get rid of our brother totally. We're gonna give him as a slave, sell him as a slave to these merchants, and let them take him with them wherever they go. So they took Joseph as a slave into Egypt. He worked in this house. The wife, the woman of that house, saw him to be a very beautiful, a handsome young man. She tried to do the wrong thing with him. He opposed that and he walked away. She went to her husband and told the story totally the other way around. She said to her husband, he tried to hurt me. So he threw him in a prison, like Guantanamo Bay kind of a base, where you don't have access to a lawyer to represent you. You don't have the right to say nothing. You're thrown there, that's it. The interior minister of that country suspected you've done something wrong. He threw him in that prison, and that prison meant he would never leave it until he was dead. And he spent years in that prison. And he was brought out later on. To cut it short, he came out and he started serving in the citadel of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh saw him to be a very wise young man, full of faith. He said, this is the one I need. Because Joseph explained a dream that Pharaoh saw. None of all those sorcerers that he had, none of them knew what the dream meant. But Joseph said the dream and explained the dream to him. He made Joseph his right hand, the number one authority after Pharaoh. So whatever Joseph said, it was Pharaoh said. Whenever Joseph spoke, it was the Pharaoh who spoke. Pharaoh gave Joseph his own ring. He said, you use my ring whenever you want to seal something or stamp something. You are in charge of all of Egypt and the Egyptian empire that ruled the world. Joseph, what did he say? He said, you meant evil against me, my brothers. You meant evil. You wanted to destroy me. You wanted to kill me. You enslaved me. But God meant it for good. You see, I'm sure if we were to be put in Joseph's position, we would have whinged and complained against God. God, I'm faithful to you. I love you. I go to church. I pray. Why are you treating me this harsh? Why didn't you save me? Why did you allow me to be a slave in Egypt? But he said, no. What we perceive as evil in the eyes of God is good. He who perseveres till the end shall live. Joseph, our father, persevered till the end. Being a slave, he came the number one authority over all of Egypt. His brothers came after so many years. They didn't recognize him. He was a grown-up, older man, but he did recognize them. And he became the reason for the salvation of his own family, his dad, his whole tribe. He was the reason to save them from famine. But you see what the Lord does when we trust Him. And when we thank Him for all the difficult times we've gone through and we are going through and will ever go through in the future. We need to be thankful.